Thank you, Chief Sullivan, for sending everything over, and Assistant Chief Purcell. Quick, highlight. Did everybody get the information that was sent over from the chief?
Yeah.
No, I got it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Wakefield Fire. Wakefield Fire entry P9.
Yeah, I mean, it looked fairly standard, Chief. Do you want to take us through your first 3 pages? Let me just pick up what I have on the printer. There we go.
Right. We were asked to basically submit as close to a level funded budget, excluding personnel services, as we could. So that's actually exactly what I did. The budget, the executive summary on page 1, it shows pretty clearly that all the increases from FY 21 to 22 are in personal services, approximately $215,882. We had not only do we have the normal step raises and so forth that we get from one year to another, but we also settled the contract. So there were some raises in there and some increases in stipends and benefits that elevated that a bit more than maybe you were expecting.
No, I mean, I think that's always the case with these. I think, Evan, you've probably seen this often enough, and Dennis and Amy as well, in terms of when, even if a negotiated raise is with a 2% COLA, it still ends up being 4 with all the steps and whatever. So in this instance, it was, it's sort of not in line, but in line with what we would expect.
Okay. I do have, did you all get a copy of the explanation too? Not just the Excel spreadsheet? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So, I showed really the only thing to show an increase or a decrease was in personal services. So I was expecting a few questions on that.
Well, no, I mean, I think we're going to always have the question on, like, and I'll leave this for my colleagues, but also we have personal services are fine. It's the question of, like, we still have the issue with the overtime issue, but that's a separate and distinct issue.
Yeah, well, I mean, without question, this year was, I have nothing to compare this 2022 since I started. There's just, it literally escapes description. Overtime was significantly affected by that pandemic. It still is. We were very fortunate not to get a single person contract coronavirus through like an emergency response, but unfortunately, like everybody else in the population, people come into contact with positives, or they have or they become positive, and they have close contacts and so forth, and the resulting quarantines significantly affect overtime. During the first surge, and we had to start it up again in November, the beginning of December, we actually increased the staffing on ladder 1 to 3, so that we had 3 pieces of equipment that had 3 personnel on it to respond. Well, it was designed to respond specifically to COVID emergencies, but you need the extra help on the call so that the all the proper personal protective equipment is put on, and more importantly, taken off correctly so that no one gets infected. And by the time you're done with all that, it literally, like I said, I have nothing to compare this to. We're over our overtime budget already. I'm sure you're well aware of that.
Yeah.
But those are, normally it's like people who are out on injury leave or on military leave or stuff like that. I mean, the vast majority of the overtime that you're seeing here is directly related to that pandemic.
Are we back to full contingent? I see you have 4 open positions. Are they filled?
Yeah, the SAFER grant that I was authorized to apply for, we'll basically add one firefighter per group. So we actually have 5 openings right now because Lou Sardella retired, one of our veteran lieutenants. So I have the 4 safer openings, and then in the 5th spot is the firefighter that's going to backfill after the promotion's made to lieutenant and so forth. So right now we have, I have 1 person, 2 people out on quarantine. But that shouldn't be for a long term. I should get 1 or both of them back next week. So we are back up to 4 groups of 12. I have a couple of, well, having said that, I have a couple of people that are out on long-term injury. So technically, I guess I'm not back up to 4 groups of 12. It's more like 1 group of 12 and 3 of 11. But,
What do we think will be, so is the goal to have 4 groups of 13 and still keep the minimum manning at 10? So you'll have 3 extras on top of it? Is that the plan?
Well, that was
for Grant?
That was my my intent initially was, yes, to do that. I unfortunately don't have any control over what the local union and town hall, starts to negotiate over. But yes, that was the thought. Was that
I thought the last union contract was settled and we're sticking with the minimum staffing of 10. Is that?
Well, we are as it sits now. I just don't know,
Yeah.
I hate to promise anything, Doug, that I can't deliver
Oh,
on.
no. That's not a your deliverable. But like right now we're at 10, and if we get the people hired in place, you'll have 4 groups of 13, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's gonna take a little bit to get them on board, though. It's not like flipping a switch. I gotta
I
get.
know. We'll look for lowered overtime in 2024. Let's say, just in time for the new contract.
I level funded the overtime because truthfully, I'm hoping that the things will wind down with the pandemic. I mean, that's up in the air. Who knows how that's gonna go? And I just don't have any way of knowing what's gonna happen this year. So.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah. go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, guys. I just was looking through my emails trying to find the Excel version of the Chiefs budget, and I can't find it. If someone wouldn't mind forwarding it over or screen sharing or something.
No, I'll share it.
I have the PDF, Chief. That's a great document. The other thing, Chief, is you are, at least I hope you're at the table when they negotiate these contracts, right?
Oh, I'm there.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I understand what you're saying. I understand you're sort of like a middleman in that totem pole. But
Yeah, it's not a very comfortable position to be in.
no, it's a terrible. Listen, I've negotiated 10 union agreements, and it's a hellish season for me every time. So trust me, I get it. But I think Doug's question was, are you comfortable with the 10-man minimum? You don't think it needs to be higher, right? And I'm not asking you to make promises about what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's a fair question.
Okay.
Actually, I would, in a perfect world, yes, I think we should probably go to 11 for staffing. That 3rd person on the ladder truck is very important, not just for COVID, but for general firefighting. We can just do more with that ladder truck. With a 3rd person on it.
But the contract doesn't need to give you an 11-man minimum for you to put 11 guys on, right? If your plan is for 13.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was plugging at when we applied for the grant.
Because I in full support of that, I would be very weary about not that I get to sit at the table, but I'd be very weary about increasing that 10-man minimum because I think it's high already in terms of just contractual language. Not operational language, but contractual language. So I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
You have the flexibility to step down from the 13 if we see things ease off with COVID.
I have the flexibility to do what? I'm sorry.
To come down from the 13-man team if COVID.
13 would be assigned to each group, and so if everybody showed up, we'd have 13 on a group. The way it is right now, I wouldn't have to hire until the staffing level dropped below 10. which, as Doug correctly pointed out, would give me a little bit more of a cushion.
Okay.
You know, it would, in a perfect world, it would reduce over time if it stays at 10.
Hey, Dad, do you know where my Xbox?
On call, so.
That's awesome.
Oh, wait,
That's
so
what
where-
makes, that's
Where's
what
my
makes
Xbox?
Zoom meetings so great. That's awesome.
Does he need to borrow my PlayStation?
I don't know what he's looking for from Xbox, but he's, we'll see.
where do we sit at trying to
You can hold this
get
hostage.
it full?
That's awesome.
What did you say, Dennis? Sorry.
Where do we sit at filling the SAFER grant personnel? Is it being held up by town council?
No, we just, actually, we just offered 5 conditional offers of employment. So Deputy Purcell's been helping me with that. And we actually got slots in the July class, which, believe it or not, is as soon as class we can get them in. And they should be through the academy. I believe the academy is 10 weeks presently. So hopefully by the end of September, they'd be out. You know, so.
Are your 3 long-termers, are they COVID related or are they?
No,
Did you get
actually.
any money back for it or?
Oh no, they'll come back. They're injuries. They're one's a wrist. I have a shoulder injury. And unfortunately we have one, I'm sorry, we do have one long-term. We have one of my guys is cancer, pretty significant cancer, and he's been out since the middle of last summer, but he's doing well. And my hope is that he will be back at some point in 2021. So 2 out of 3. Right? Am I forgetting somebody, Tom?
No, I think that's it. Just one long term.
Okay.
In that sort of situation, is there long-term, like, at some point, does that person shift to sort of a long-term disability insurance and you just rehire for them? Is that?
Well, they had a recent change in the state law where, unfortunately, a few years ago, we had another member that had cancer, and that person had to use their sick time to deal with it. And the law has actually changed, and it's kind of in line with the old heart and lung bill, if you will, where if you have cancer now, it's presumed that it's job related. So that person's actually on injured leave, not sick leave. Like I had said earlier, the person he's doing really well, and I'm really hopeful that he'll be back later on this year.
Okay.
It was pretty significant cancer. It's like stage 4, so. But he's still, despite that, he's still doing very well.
Yeah, if you can rally back from stage 4, that's always impressive. I'll ask, my colleagues, was there any things that jumped out at the budget that, you wanted to go over with the chief? I have a few questions, but I'll save them to the end.
As far as the steps and tracks type of thing, is there any way of putting that on the schedule? Guide each firefighter to know who's still going up, where they stand, saying this is a new contract?
Yeah, the budget, actually the budget increases take into account step raises and so forth. That's why it's split in half. If you go to the personal services roster, you'll see we have a rate for the first 26 weeks and a rate for the second 26. Usually the step raises and stuff are tied in to either a 6-month or a year span. So those are accounted for that's including those, Dennis.
I understand accounted for, but next to their name, can you put where they are on the scale?
Oh, you mean their step?
Yeah, so we
Okay.
can see, like, new hires to expect 5 jumps and all this stuff.
Yeah, usually the last, I could do that, yes, to answer your question. The last 6 or so firefighters on the list are usually not top step. They're like somewhere in between the bottom step and the top step. And you can see that in the the projected salaries that they're gonna have for next year, you'll see like most of them have the same salary level, and all of a sudden you'll see like a slight decrease at the end. And I haven't done anything about the open slots, although I did put the bottom step in for the open slots, so they're accounted for.
But Chief, I've just gotten my hands on this Excel document.
Okay.
And I stand by what I said about your PDF. I love the way you present that. But I wasn't smart enough to do the math quick enough based on those numbers. And so funny enough, I was just, in a meeting with Steve a few days ago, commending him for the fact that his the COLAs he announces generally sort of line up with the overall bottom line wage increase on a personnel line from department to department. He talked about a 3% COLA for a certain union this year. He budgeted in and it came out at 3.5 or 4. And that's about right. That's about as transparent as you can get with a contract when you look at step raises and everything else. So can you just go into a little bit more detail about how in the world we got to 6? First of all, what's the COLA this year? And how did we get from whatever the COLA is? Because I know it's not 6.5. How do we get from the COLA to 6.5 here on the personnel line?
Okay, the contract's a 3-year contract, and the first year it's split in half, the raise wise. So they get 1.5 for the first 6 months, 1.5 for the second 6 months. And then the second year they get a 3% raise, and that's for the whole year. That's not divided up. That's not split up into 2 components. And then the third year, I believe it's either 2.5 or 2.75. Can you help me out with that, Tom? Do you have any
I
idea?
believe it's 2.5, Chief.
Which year are we in now in that contract?
Third year.
Okay.
Third year. So we're actually, this budget would be the beginning of the second year. The budget that's coming, not this present, not the one we're in.
We're in year 2 with a 1.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this, Evan, the deal is the back 6 months of this year, then create, because you waited, so you have less of a raise this year, but you get the full 3% next year on top of the additional sort of the catch up. So it's 3% over this part of the year, but it's more like 4.5% over the first half. So
Okay.
that gets you to, what is it, roughly 375, and granted to get to 645, but there we have, there aren't,
This is the first contract in probably like 3 contracts where all the raises weren't split, half and half. It's been a while since we've had a raise for an entire year without splitting it in half.
also, and the other thing is remember he's got 4 additional firefighters budgeted this year. So that's the other 300.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. And so that we're looking at, like we should be, we're looking at, when I look at 6.45, I'm not accounting for the offset that comes in through the SAFER grant, right?
Actually, the 4 firefighters.
You are counting, you are getting the offset of that, although you have 5 SAFER grant, you have an open firefighter, and then 5, it looks like 5 SAFER grant firefighters. Is Mike Morocquin not
Yes.
on this recent
He's a
SAFER grant?
firefighter, yes.
So he's
That's a
an open
different
SAFER
SAFER
grant.
grant. So that's not 100%
So,
reimbursement.
right, so that's the big difference, Evan. It's the one firefighter we have open, that's the 67,000 or so. And then Morocquin's coming off, and that means that probably of the 70, what is it? It's like 18,000 of his is coming on. So of the 350, it's probably, ballparking, and it's probably 85,000 is new firefighters, and then the rest are raises, which gets you into that 4 and change range.
Okay. I thought you were telling me for a second that 645 number was.
Yeah, included all the 2
Well, yeah, I thought you were trying to tell me that figure was net of offsets, and that would have really scared me. So, okay, that makes some more sense to me, Chief, because that's a number, and again, this isn't on you anyway, Chief, but that's a number. When you get into the 6 range, that's the type of number I beat up the schools for every year, because that's just an unsustainable number. But these are circumstances that are different. And we've talked a lot in this subcommittee and as a full committee, and I'm sure the town council and you and Steve have had a lot of conversations about the merit of hiring more firefighters through the Safer Grant. And so that's a different situation. So thank you. Sorry for slowing everyone down.
No, it's okay. I mean, I need to point out that if this wasn't a 100% reimbursement from the federal government,
Right.
I'm very skeptical that the town would have gone for this Safer Grant with the 4 firefighters.
Right.
Well, but even that, I mean,
Fear is always that we do this, and then 4 years from now, the town's in a little less well financial situation, and then we have to let 4 firefighters go because we shouldn't have afforded them in the first place. That's why I'm always a little leery of the Safer Grant.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not big on the Safer Grant concept as it is, but if you need to hire people, you know, it's nice to get some help in the first, whatever it is, 3 or 4 years. And I get that. So, you know, some of these conversations we've had before, but I'm just, you know, that, so it doesn't matter, but I just want to understand that number because it kind of looks bigger than it is in a way. And it's a true number, but it looks bigger than it is in terms of an incremental increase. And you have some good explanations for that. So thank you.
So, Chief, I'm a little, not surprised, but I'm trying to understand. Dennis, did you have more questions? I'm sorry, or Evan, or Amy?
The only thing I had is that the Safer Grant indirectly could fund retirements for the first 4 years. If we don't bring any new people on to replace them, we've got that caveat of 4 years of float, not with minimum manning, but from going from 13 to 12 and still not affecting us monetarily by absorbing that firefighter by the Safer Grant.
You know, just before you go too much further, one of the stipulations of the Safer Grant is that you have to maintain, and with the 4 new firefighters, it would be a staffing level of 55. So you're required to maintain that during the entire life of the grant. So if somebody else retires, I have to backfill them up until the period of performance for the Safer Grant expires. And then theoretically, we wouldn't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. So we're locked in on 55 now, Dennis, for, you know,
Yeah.
4 years, right? 4 or 5?
Well, no, I'm sorry, it's 3 years.
Oh, okay.
This is the beginning, July 1st, well, actually now would be, whenever they start, will be the beginning of the 3 years.
And then, so we're on the hook year 4. The town has to pay the full amount year 4.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
I know Steve asked you to level fund things, but talk a bit about, and I know it's a crazy year, but you're way under on all of the, like the sundry items. You're sort of, the things you're level funding are things you're coming in at in general. The contractual services and materials and supplies are way down from where they were past years.
Okay.
Is that all COVID related, or like, you know, again, like
Yeah, I have
your
a couple-
contractual seems to have come down quite a bit in the last couple of years, so. I
There's
guess-
certain accounts were definitely affected by COVID. One of them is training. Some of that money was allocated to pay for like outside vendors to come in and conduct specific training classes and so forth. That kind of went out the window with the pandemic. So we're lining up stuff for the spring now, before the fiscal year ends, because things are finally starting to look a little bit better. But that's one example of an account that was affected by COVID. Another thing is that Kevin uses exactly midway through the year to like kind of like give you a snapshot of where my budget is.
Yeah.
And there's certain accounts like protective gear is actually down to about 3,000 because I ordered a ton of gear.
Okay,
Remember we had that discussion a few years ago where you guys gave me the money for 10 sets a gear.
Yep.
Yeah, so I ordered that, and that's come in since Kevin's,
Oh, okay, so we're down to you don't have much left in uniforms and clothing and.
yeah, I mean, it was showing a tremendous amount of money in there. It was over, I think it was over 25 grand, maybe more money, but that's gone.
Okay,
And that can work the other way too, chief, right? Like, you know, I know at least in, I remember the police department I was overseeing was, you know, they would buy a bunch of their supplies and stuff up front, you know, in July or August, and, you know, it would show their budget 90% expended, and we started to get worried, you know, the first time we saw it, and it was sort of like, well, yeah, that's kind of the extent of what we're going to spend out of that account. So it's
you can't.
part of me
tell
thinks
couple.
this is another thing that is not your problem, chief, at all. But and it's not one that's easily solved. But I also think we start a little early here in the budget process, not in Wakefield, but in general in town government, because you really don't have a good look at the year. You know, only looking at 2 quarters, but that's neither here nor there, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and Evan, I think I'm gonna bring up to Kevin, is for a lot of these budgets, we show the actual expenditure through week 26. We should show the actual expenditure through week 26 for fiscal year 2020, just so that we can get a sense of comparison.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah. I like to see, frankly, Doug, I like to see, you know, a 5-year history but you know, I pick my battles with Kevin. I know he's busy, but that's a good one. I mean, it's good to see sort of if there's consistency in terms of, you know, when money is being spent year to year, not just how much at the end or in the middle of a given year.
We don't all have 20-something eyes, Evan, so like, you know, I don't know how many more columns we can cram.
I know, I get it.
Another example of an account that has less money in it than it appears is vehicle maintenance, like the diesel mechanic. He's a great guy, but he takes forever to process invoices. So he's done some work on the vehicles that he hasn't billed me for yet, and I keep reminding him as tactfully as I can that really doesn't help me.
Right, and this is the same guy you've had forever, right? So this is the one that this comes up periodically year to year as well. So I think I'll just make a note of that for when we.
He's a great guy. He's an excellent diesel.
So I mean, I'm not making a note of like him. I'm more saying like, oh, don't think you have all this extra room in the budget because it's already spent by and large. It's just a timing issue.
It takes nothing to rack up like $10,000 or $12,000 in that account.
Yeah.
You know.
By the way, Doug, just to on that note, sort of maybe a more accurate representation of where we are at any point in the year might be better represented by an encumbrance figure instead of a total spend figure, because there are situations like that with your mechanic chief where vendors and for all, you know, all other kinds of reasons that revenue or expense is not reflected in the actual numbers for, you know, until months after, you know, the money's been committed one way or the other. So just a side note there, Doug, to augment what we were just talking about.
Yeah, a lot of independent guys will wait till after the first of the year just for tax purposes. So, I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's the case in this instance, but
No, he just doesn't like paperwork, right? He likes working on cars. I mean, yeah, I get that.
So some of the other accounts, the clerical is just a straight raise for her. I don't know, did you have any questions on any of the other accounts besides the overtime?
No, I mean, I assume, and it looks like everybody's sort of at 3%. Was Pronko just promoted to captain and that's why he's at 12?
One of the things that came out of the recent agreement was they negotiated I guess for lack of a description, another stipend for senior captain, senior lieutenant, and senior firefighter. Senior captain is 7.5%, senior lieutenant 6.5%, senior firefighter is 5.5%. So,
Right, so why is Shinny up 8?
pardon me?
Why is David Shinny up 8%?
He was promoted from lieutenant.
Oh, he was promoted. Okay, that's fine.
And then there's a couple others, as Eric Cole and Gary Hill, they were both promoted to lieutenant.
Yeah.
And also another thing in the contract, well, it wouldn't come out in salaries. It would come out in one of the other accounts further down. The EMS coordinator, that position was split into 2 positions because of the workload, and they both get a stipend. So, and those happen to be the same 2 members that got promoted.
Okay.
So there's 5 or 6, where I'm going with this is there's 5 or 6 department members that got Kevin picked up on this too, that got a bigger bump than you would have expected by looking at their coworker.
You know, that's just a function of, a function of how they negotiated the contract.
Yeah.
Which, was good, but always you always get leery when the contracts are negotiated for the benefits of the senior guys. But that's the way these things work.
Yep.
4th of July expense, did that come out or is that just left in there?
Well, I mean, it's included in the, where did I put that out of, miscellaneous? It might be miscellaneous. It's included in there, but to be honest with you, our history with overtime is horrendous and it gets used. Whether it gets used in miscellaneous or it ends up in regular overtime. But yes, it is in there. That would be somewhere about, I think it's about 7,000 or 8,000.
Well, can we just put it in there that we have not eliminated it, even though there is not going to be any 4th of July this year like last year, and
Yep.
we're just leaving it in there as a kitty?
Yeah, I think the last sentence in miscellaneous overtime on page 5, it says it also includes details worked on July 4th, which is talking about the parade and fireworks and.
Well, I understand that, but it doesn't give a dollar figure so that it highlights how much money is in there in the.
Okay.
I just want it highlighted that this is how much is in there that is in that overall figure.
Okay, I mean, I could add that in. That's not hard to do.
Now we can use it elsewhere, but just so for future years, we know that's how much was budgeted when it does hopefully come back.
Yep, that goes up a bit. That goes up a bit every year, but obviously because of the.
Right,
and all that, but yeah.
Right. I mean, I think I would, what did you say? It's $8,000, chief, is generally
That's
overtime.
close. It's pretty close to that.
Yeah. So I would just put in after the July 4th, just put in parentheses, 8 to 10,000 normally.
Okay.
And that'll give town council a sense of that you included it, even though it isn't going to be there. Because by the way, I don't know about the rest of y'all. It seemed like every 3rd house was setting off New Hampshire style fireworks wherever. So I was surprised we didn't have, a variety of house fires or hands blown off during
I think you take that up with the other chief, Doug.
July 4th. Well, no, when somebody blows their hand off, Mike's guys have to come.
Yeah,
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Anything else? Again, it's always a sort of post contract negotiation. It's always interesting to see. I think, and Chief, I will sort of, when I talk to the finance committee, because maybe town council will bring it up, but I'll make sure we lay the groundwork for that before we get Dan going crazy, that the 645 includes these additional things. So it's not really, it's not a 645. It also includes an increase, the rolling off of the SAFER grant and the hiring of an additional firefighter in there as well as some of the negotiated raises and the weird thing in terms of the split raise system that we have going on this year, which is that 1.5 double counts in next year a little. And I'll sort of I'll work with Kevin to back into what that number is so that we can, we can cut off. That'll definitely be discussion at the finance committee table. but we should also be prepared to have that, you know, you should be prepared for that question to rear itself at town council.
Okay.
Yeah, Doug, I think it would be good to have a number, just as you say, back into the number that it would be without all that extra stuff that isn't sort of a year-to-year increase. Because like you said, it might reflect more of what we've been seeing across other budgets and personal services.
Yeah, okay. Anything else from FinCom folks? How do you feel about?
Is that it from the chief?
Yeah, I'm just kind of waiting to see if you have any questions about anything in particular. Dennis, you know that Louis Sardella retired, so you know,
Right.
we bring that up every year, that, you know, the buybacks and all that stuff. That's definitely going to surface this year. Just, you know, I know you probably knew that already, but
Oh, so now that the perfect attendance thing is gone, does anybody have perfect attendance this year?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chief and I, we both.
Yeah,
I bet.
I even missed a trick since March. Yeah.
Well, I will say, Mr. Chairman, I guess as a matter of a closing comment, that's not particularly about this budget, but if that's okay. I know, Chief, I gave you a pretty aggressive line of questioning last year about adding the deputy chief position, and Deputy Purcell is here. I'm at, you know, not that I would have handled it any differently, but you know, I didn't know at that point who you were planning to fill it with, and that really isn't pertinent to the conversation. And I'd be dishonest if I were considering that in my sort of line of questioning during budget discussion, if I cared who it was. But I will tell you, I have met Deputy Purcell, I think back in the day when he was Captain Purcell, and I'm pretty confident you couldn't have picked a better guy to be your number 2 up there. So, you know, this is a much more straightforward budget this year, and I don't have much trouble to give you this year. And
Well,
so
that's good to hear.
I did just want to, yet at least, maybe I need to do some more digging to find it, but no, I'm kidding. So I wanted to tell you that, and make sure Deputy Purcell heard that as well.
Appreciate that, Evan. Thank you very much. And on that note, along the lines with the police department, where they have the deputy chief and their administrative people in line, it runs a lot smoother. The chief needs the help. I mean, he's been running this department by himself for 13 years now. It's and it was needed. And again, thank you. So it's going great so far.
I believe that, and I feel actually the same way about running a town by yourself, which Steve has been doing for a while, and I think he's
Yeah.
out of his damn mind for not having a number 2. So I hear you.
So I don't need
Not
as
many
much
companies.
need as much Advil this year, or
Oh, it couldn't have been that bad.
No Toms either, so you're in, you know, relatively good stead, you know. And I think the other thing that I would just follow up to say is when you do the when you talk about bringing the people on, that you've got these slots at the academy. Oh, sorry, Dennis. Just make sure that you know that they that all the FinCom members and the town council folk know that just because they're in the academy doesn't mean they'll be preventing overtime until, what is it, September, October, November of next year, if you get them all hired. So that the overtime issue is going to remain an issue, especially as long as we have COVID here.
yeah, that's a very important point, Doug, because I think there's people that have the mindset that as soon as the fiscal year starts, we can cut the overtime substantially, and that's just not that won't be the case for quite a while.
Yep. Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, as far as the overtime goes, we are getting reimbursed from the federal government through FEMA or another grant, the CARES Act. Or
Yeah,
something.
the town's emergency manager, Tom Walsh, is definitely working on that. I haven't seen any of that, but that might end up, going. By the time we get it, that will probably end up going back into the town coffers. But yes, my understanding is that a significant amount of that overtime, the town should be realizing some kind of a reimbursement for.
Okay. The second part of my thing is, under your capital planning. Yeah, the work in the dispatch area, can't we just postpone that until we really know what they're gonna do? And maybe it can be incorporated with the police
Well,
department?
that's been brought up several times, and that's frankly why we haven't gotten the funding for it. The problem with that is that it really can't wait, and the equipment is starting to fail. You might have, I don't know if you noticed or not, but last year that amount was 72,000, I believe, and it's like 57.5 now. That's because we had to actually replace some of the equipment. It actually croaked in the meantime, and I split that. I split the damage, if you will, between fire alarm Randy Hudson and myself. We kind of sat down and came up with some kind of a plan to pay for some of that equipment. It really doesn't. I mean, I understand it's in the same building, but it really doesn't have anything to do with the project that that whole renovation project. That's by and large a police thing, although it does affect us with the utility systems, HVAC, all that.
No, but it will affect you by moving the dispatch.
Well, actually, no, our dispatch is gonna stay right where it is. We're upstairs on the fire side and they're moving their dispatch, their 911. We don't do the 911. So it's actually doesn't affect that at all.
Okay, so you're not gonna be combined upstairs, you're just gonna be where you currently are?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I got no problem with your radios, the second half. I mean, we knew that was, you only got half last year, so.
Yeah, I mean, I lost half of them when everybody started to panic with the
Right.
COVID and stuff.
I understand that. I got no problem with that.
Definitely need those.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
There are no more questions from the committee. We'll call the subcommittee group to, I don't know, what is it we do? Call it to order or call it to?
No, that's the beginning. You want to adjourn. I move to adjourn.
Oh, there you go. I second.
Okay. Well,
All
thank
in
you very
favor,
much
goodbye.
Thank you very much for, your support and for listening to my side of it anyway.
No.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate everything.
All right.
I'm new
Good
to
seeing
it,
you.
so thank you.
Nice seeing you all.
We're all set.
Bye-bye.
All right. Good night.